Good morning, everybody, and welcome and good evening to our guests and friends in the US. My name's Anthony Shembry, and I'm the Chief Executive of the St Vincent's Healthcare Network here in Sydney, Australia. And it's my great pleasure to welcome you virtually to the St Vincent's Healthcare Campus here in Sydney. Welcome everyone to Inside St Vincent's Forum on Cellular Therapies. A very special and warm welcome to our guest of honour, the Honourable Arthur Sinodinos, AO, Australian Ambassador to the United States. I'd also like to acknowledge that we're joined today for this special occasion by Dave Sharma, federal member for Wentworth in the Australian Parliament. We have representatives from the trustees of Mary Aikenhead Ministries, Mr. Paul McClintock, AO, Chairman of St Vincent's Health Australia, Charles Curran, AC, Chairman of the Trustees of the St Vincent's Curran Foundation, and my fellow co-host for our forum today. Richard Haddock has joined us, AO, Chairman of the Board of St Vincent's Curran Foundation, Sisters of Charity, and of course, my colleagues from across St Vincent, welcome. Could I also acknowledge our campus partners, the Garvan Institute, the Victor Chang Cardiac Research Institute, and our university partners, the University of New South Wales, University of Notre Dame, and Australian Catholic University. Welcome to all our friends and supporters. Thank you so much for joining us today. May I also acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Aurora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the lands where I am today here in Eastern Sydney. I acknowledge that they have occupied and cared for these lands over countless generations, and we celebrate their continuing contribution to the life of our great city. Today, we are going to share with you the latest research and treatment developments in cellular therapies, with a focus on hematological cancers and in particular myeloma. We're also going to share with you the recent very exciting news of a very special partnership between St Vincent's Hospital Sydney and the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston, which has been so generously enabled by visionary philanthropy. Most importantly, we're going to hear from our panel of clinicians, and I'll introduce you to Claire, who will be leading that panel discussion shortly. In the last 5 years, much has been achieved towards the development of the St Vincent Centre for Excellence in Cellular Therapy through visionary philanthropy. Today, I would like to particularly thank and honour Dr. John Chong, Ann Chong, and their family for their visionary contribution to the construction of our bone marrow transplant and hematology ward here at St Vincent's. Their contribution is in memory of their son, Adam John Chong, and now for a new 10-year commitment in supporting and funding the Director for Cellular Therapies. I'd also like to thank all our donors whose support has meant that we have the best equipment, the right facilities, access to our cutting-edge research fellowships for cellular therapies. And in particular, could I acknowledge the Naloon Foundation, the Zamasi Foundation, the Medich Foundation, MS Research Australia, the Bourne Foundation, Mr. Andy Price and the Kirawina Investment Company, and our dear friend, Delta Goodrum and the Delta Goodrum Foundation. It's now my great pleasure to introduce you to John Symond. John is a business leader and visionary philanthropist. His vision and generosity has enabled the formation of this very important partnership between St. Vincent's Hospital and the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston. So, James, good morning and welcome. Thank you for all your support of St. Vincent's and this very exciting partnership. But I wonder if we could start, if you could share with us how you came to be enabling this partnership and your connection to the panelists that we will hear from today.
Thanks, Anthony. Great to be here, and I think I regularly get from the John versus the James Symond, and that's okay. That's fine. That's okay. Look, I mean, I'm very excited to be part of this. Anthony, December 2017, I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, and life changed. Life changed, and it became different. And as anyone who knows, who's been diagnosed with a cancer, you know, things change, and you need to find support. You need to find great people to guide you through. And, you know, as soon as I was diagnosed, I basically tried to find the best people on the planet to help me through. You know, you want to live a vibrant, joyful, great life. You know, I'm 49 years of age, and I was 47 when I was diagnosed, and certainly it was one hell of a concern. I basically, you know, look to St. Vincent's as the leader in the field in many things from a medical point of view in this country. And St. Vincent's have been very kind to me, you know, through Dr. John Moore, through Sam Millican, through, you know, a number of their people. They've really helped cradle me through to perhaps, you know, someone who shouldn't be on the planet, you know, right now. In conjunction with that, a very good friend actually put me on to Dana-Farber, put me on to Paul Richardson. And Paul has been just amazing as well. You know, one of the world leaders in multiple myeloma, who very much settled me down and my family down into the direction that we were going to take, from someone who only had a very short amount of potential time to live to someone who is as strong as an ox, you know, 4 odd years later. So for me, it's, you know, trying to bring great people together. And, you know, we got Paul Richardson working with Dr. John Moore, and then went from there, you know, and I believe that relationship has blossomed to what it is today, which we're very excited with. So my journey hasn't finished, and, you know, my journey probably won't finish, hopefully, until I'm an old man. So the support of key people and the therapies that are coming through and what's happening today, even since I've, you know, was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, you know, what is available today versus what is available yesterday to what is available tomorrow is extraordinary, you know, in terms of the medical advancements. And I wanted to participate. My family wanted to participate. And if we could, in our own way, you know, present a gift, and, you know, it's, you know, you do what you can if you can. And for me, it was what I could, because I could. And, you know, to start this program with a $1 million gift was important. And that's just the tip of the iceberg as far as I'm concerned. This program probably needs a lot more, which hopefully more people will participate with it in the future. And other avenues of philanthropy within St. Vincent's and Dana-Farber, because information's power. And you get a lot of these smart people together from St. Vincent's and from Dana-Farber, and 1 + 1 will equal 3. You know, what will come of it should be explosive. And I'm very excited to be part of that.
James, we're so thankful for your gift. It is extraordinary in your generosity, and on behalf of St. Vincent's, may I thank you so very much to you and your family. This gift will go a long way in formalising that partnership between St Vincent's and Dana-Farber. What's your hopes around what this partnership might be able to deliver in the future?
Anthony, I've had the privilege of working with people at St Vincent's, Dr. John Moore and Sam and so forth. I've had the privilege of working with Professor Paul Richardson, and these are some of the smartest people on the planet, and the people that work within their teams are some of the smartest people on the planet. Get them together, get them to cross-pollinate their brains and their ideas, and magic things will happen. So if I can participate and if I can get these teams together, and if I can encourage, the St. Vincent's sort of Dana-Farber Harvard partnership moving forward, what an explosive combination. In 5 years' time, and in 10 years' time, and if we can look back and say, listen, this has come from that. I mean, how proud would we all be, from a little program that started with a little flame to something that could be a lot more explosive. And for me, that's very exciting. I mean, I speak to these people very regularly, and they're the people who have kept me alive, full stop. So I'm happy to do what it takes.
Yeah, well, like I said, we are so very grateful. One of the things here at St Vincent's that we're working very hard on is bringing clinical trials as therapy for our patients. And so this partnership will help expand that pool of clinical trials that we're able to offer our patients. I guess I have a final question of interest. The role of philanthropy in health. And I'm just wondering what might be your observations as one of our philanthropists, about that relationship between the clinicians, our patients and philanthropists. Where do you see that going?
Yeah, look, the king of philanthropy here is Charles. So, whatever I say is just going to be a junior comment compared to Charles, that's for sure. However, philanthropy in Australia is, in my opinion, not enough, nowhere near enough. But put that aside. Like I said before, if you're in a position to do some good and to put forward some dollars, and that's what it needs. It needs dollars. It's nice saying I'll donate time, but at the end of the day, you guys have hard costs, and it's not a bottomless pit, and that's where the Bourne Foundation is spectacular in what they do. And as a patient, I'm very lucky in life, and I've done okay, and sold a few home loans in my life, and so things are I'm able to give back, and where patients are able to give back. I mean, you guys have given me 4.5, 5 years or whatever it is of, an absolute commitment, absolute focus on making sure I stay alive and healthy and, strong, and it's time to also give back. And I think as a patient, if you can also do that in any way that you can do it at any level, there are people that can give 100 times more than me, but it's to do what you can if you can, or where you can. So that's really important.
Well, we're very grateful, James, and you will always be part of the St Vincent's family. Your family is part of our St Vinny's family, and we thank you so very, very much. And I wish you continuing health. Thank you for the support of our people, and thank you for joining us this morning.
You're very welcome. I'm very proud to do so.
Thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce Claire Weaver, who's going to facilitate our panel discussion this morning. Claire is a very successful journalist currently with the 9 News Australia. She's reported extensively on behalf of household media publications, including the Australian Women's Weekly, Body and Soul, and the Sydney Morning Herald. It's my great pleasure now to hand over to Claire.
Thank you, Anthony. I'm delighted to be here today as part of this special announcement for the St Vincent's Centre of Excellence in Cellular Therapy. Most of us here today have an interest in this area, so would already be familiar with the role that the field of cellular therapies is playing in a number of different areas of medical research. Cellular therapy involves the transplantation of human cells to replace or repair damaged tissue and/or cells. The advancement of clinical research, evolution of technology, and development of innovative products is increasing the different types of cells that can be used as part of a treatment or therapy option across a variety of malignant and non-malignant diseases. Since performing the first successful allogeneic hematopoietic stem cell transplant, that's HSCT, in Australia in the mid-1970s, the St Vincent's Haematology Department has maintained translational research at the forefront of their mission. The St Vincent's Haematology Unit is nationally recognised for its contribution in establishing HSCT as a curative procedure for haematological cancers, and more recently in the field of HSCT for autoimmune diseases. Today, the team at St Vincent's is working towards becoming the leading national site for research into multiple myeloma and stem cell transplantation within the next 10 years. I'd now like to introduce our expert panel. Dr. Sam Milliken is head of the Department of Haematology and Bone Marrow Transplantation at St Vincent's. He's also chair of the St Vincent's Clinic Foundation Research Grants Committee and has published more than 85 papers in peer-reviewed medical journals and 8 chapters in medical textbooks. Sam has been on staff at St Vincent's since 1990 and was the driving force behind the philanthropically enabled Haematology, Blood and Marrow Transplant Unit, which opened at St Vincent's in 2018. Dr. Milliken and Associate Professor Moore, who you'll meet next, are currently working closely with the St Vincent's current foundation to enable the vision for the Centre of Excellence status for the Cellular Therapies Program, and to realise the goal of St Vincent's becoming a leading national site for research into multiple myeloma and stem cell transplantation. Associate Professor John Moore is the Chong Family Director of Cellular Therapy, a haematologist and medical oncologist at St Vincent's. John has extensive experience in stem cell transplantation and immunotherapy, spanning over 20 years. He's been an active member of the stem cell transplant community in Australia and abroad. He's published extensively in the field of stem cell transplantation and is team leader of the Stem Cell Transplant Group in the Blood Diseases and Cancer Laboratory at St Vincent's Centre for Applied Medical Research and a chief investigator at St Vincent's Hospital in numerous clinical trials. Dr. Georgia McCaughan is a haematologist and the inaugural Zamasa Myeloma Fellow at St Vincent's Hospital, Sydney. Georgia has led registry-based studies in multiple myeloma utilising data from the Australian Bone Marrow Transplant Recipient Registry and the Myeloma and Related Diseases Registry, and co-leads 2 New South Wales harmonisation projects evaluating prescribing patterns, treatment outcomes, and toxicity of chemotherapy regimens in multiple myeloma. She is co-investigator of the PREEMPT study, which is utilising single cell sequencing to define and characterise dormant tumour cells, as well as the bone marrow microenvironment in multiple myeloma patients. The project has been successful in obtaining $500,000 of seed funding from the UNSW Cellular Genomics Futures Institute. And now, on behalf of St Vincent's new international partner, Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, I'd like to welcome Dr. Paul G. Richardson. Paul is one of the world's leading experts in multiple myeloma and the clinical program leader and director of clinical research at the Jerome Lippo Multiple Myeloma Center at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in the US. He is also the R.J. Corman Professor of Medicine at Harvard Medical School. The Dana-Farber Cancer Institute has for many years been a global leader in myeloma research, driving a revolution in myeloma care, beginning with the approval of the drug bortezomib in 2003. The work of Paul and his team has led to the approval of new medicines that have transformed the outlook for myeloma patients, enabling many to live 3 to 4 times longer than those in the pre-bortezomib era. Sam, let's come to you first. Sam, as head of the haematology department at St Vincent's, you head an area in which the hospital has long occupied a leadership position. Can you tell us a little bit about the journey towards establishing the Centre for Excellence?
Thanks, Claire. It's also my pleasure to welcome everyone to our webinar. Things have changed significantly and undoubtedly for the better since I first started here in 1990. I was very fortunate, having done my initial training in Australia, I was able to consolidate it in blood and marrow transplantation for haematological cancers at the Royal Marsden Hospital. before I joined renowned experts in the field here at St Vincent's, who later became my mentors, Professor Jim Biggs, Kerry Atkinson, David Maher and Tony Dodds. St Vincent's haematology has always been committed to excellence in both patient care and research, and Jim was responsible for pioneering the way with the first adult donor transplant here in Australia. Kerry and Tony were to expand his early work. Tony led our expansion into the Kinghorn Cancer Centre, which facilitates our ongoing dedication to patient care backed by quality research. In those days, our understanding of disease and the best ways to treat it was somewhat basic by the standards of today. We now realise and understand much better how all myelomas, leukemias, lymphomas, and even severe autoimmune diseases are not the same. We're now on the cusp of what is termed precision medicine, where we're able to tailor the many new discoveries of recent years to individualise and better treat patients with life-threatening disorders. Together, we've been able to maintain and build our haematology service as a centre of excellence with the help of the Curran Foundation and generous philanthropy from people like John and Ann Chong, Delta Goodrem. We were able to provide our state-of-the-art inpatient facility to ensure excellent patient care. Look, I've always been excited and stimulated by haematology, but I don't think there's ever been a more exciting time than right now.
It is an exciting time, as you say, for cell therapies in the medical science community for the treatment of both malignant and non-malignant disease. In relation to malignant disease, could you explain the progress of cell therapies in recent years and why continued advancements of these treatments are so important for patients?
Well, look, we've continued to make steady progress in the area of blood and marrow stem cell transplantation, but with modest but important advances, improving cure rates and reducing side effects and being able to offer the procedure safely to many more patients. However, with research, as we better understand the complexity and differences within particular disease categories, not all myelomas, for example, are the same, we've been able to realise new cellular and biological therapies to help overcome those cases where conventional therapies are not successful. A good example of this is what is termed CAR, or chimeric antigen receptor therapy, that harnesses and activates the immune system to overcome cancer. There have also been major advances in designing new drugs that target improving the body's immune response to cancer or block the mechanisms that allow cancer cells to multiply. The area of vaccinating against cancer is also looking very exciting.
Fantastic. And looking to the future, what do you see as the biggest needs for the cellular therapy program here at St Vincent's?
Well, James Symond, with thanks, touched on this, but for further success, we need to increase our physical space and to be able to efficiently work and continue to attract, train and educate bright, talented researcher clinicians such as Dr. Georgia McCorn. We need to further our strategic partnerships with other centres of excellence such as the Dana-Farber to ensure we remain productive and continue to better the well-being of our patients as quickly as we are able. We're also hoping to expand our footprint with the proposed West Street Translational Research Centre, which will be right next door to the Kinghorn Cancer Centre and the Garvan, St Vincent's and Applied Medical Research and Victor Chang Centres. Without the help and support of people such as James Symond, Anne and John Chong, Delta Goodrem, the Medich family, Ambassador Synodinis, and organisations such as the Zamasa and Bourne Foundations, and not least the Curran Foundation, our important work would not proceed. We're very, very grateful.
Thank you, Sam. John, as the Chong family director of cellular therapy, a role that's been generously enabled by philanthropy, could you share with us the vision for the Centre of Excellence for Cellular Therapies at St Vincent's Hospital and outline how myeloma research fits into that vision?
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I'd like to first of all start by thanking James for his visionary donation. I think it's an amazing thing to do, and it's great to be able to work with a patient in partnership like this. So our vision for the cellular therapy unit has been evolving over the last few years, and really what we see is that the field of stem cell transplantation has now evolved to not just using stem cells, but other cells of the immune system, and for instance. And so what we want to do is try and develop a program that looks after our malignant work and continue to make that safer and make transplant access to patients more easily. For instance, we've just finished a study in Australia looking at half-matched stem cell transplants for people from diverse ethnic groups who cannot find a stem cell transplant donor. And that's been highly successful. And so we want to continue our work in that area. In the non-malignant area, we have a special interest in scleroderma and multiple sclerosis, and there is a lot of data showing that stem cell transplant resets the immune system in those conditions. And so we have PhD students in that area. We have a large biobank where we're doing lots of research with the Centre for Applied Medical Research with my colleague David Meyer. So we have some really fantastic people working in that area. Myeloma has traditionally been a candidate for stem cell therapy as well. So classically, patients have their own stem cells used to try and get rid of the myeloma for as long a period of time. And in fact, in Australia, there are about 800 to 900 of those procedures done every year. And so what we have been trying to do is make that procedure safer. And also through the Australian Bone Marrow Transplant Recipient Registry, which we run here, we have been looking at the data and showing that the procedure has become safer and more effective over time, mainly because we've got much better drugs that get people into remission before they go to the stem cell transplant. But it is very possible that stem cell transplant for myeloma may not be being done in 5 years' time because of the new treatment, which Sam mentioned, CAR T cells, where the patient's immune cells are taught to attack the myeloma. And so we have been involved in trials in leukemia and lymphoma in that area, but soon there will be trials coming for myeloma, and they look extremely promising. So this plus using antibodies which stimulate the cells of the immune system to kill off the myeloma are the future for myeloma treatment. And so we really want to incorporate that into our vision for the Cellular Therapy Excellence Centre.
Brilliant. And what are the core elements of the St Vincent's Dana-Farber collaborative partnership that's being launched today? And how would you describe the possible benefits for patients?
Yeah. So a lot of the research we do at St Vincent's and at Dana-Farber is about the clinicians seeing a need in an area and then coming back to the laboratory and saying, how can we fix this? So our first area, we've got 3 areas that we're interested in collaborating in. And this was after discussions between myself, Paul Richardson, Sam Milligan, Georgia McCorn, trying to think about how we could link the 2 institutions. The first thing we'd like to do is clinical research. That means clinical trials, getting access to drugs that are not on Medicare, for instance, that are looking promising and gives patients other options for their disease. Because the problem with myeloma is it tends to go into remission for some time and then come back again. And we need to try and keep it in remission for as long as possible. So clinical trials is key. And Paul Richardson's group is extremely active, and we also have a very active clinical trial unit. And linking those 2 units by having staff paid each unit and linking across means we will get access to therapies much more quickly than we would have in the past. The second thing that we think makes a massive difference to medical and importantly, allied health, nursing, physios, OTs, pharmacists, is travelling for fellowships. Haematology care is a team effort, and we try and work as a team, and we respect all our other colleagues and expertise in the care of the patients. And we have previously funded nursing staff and other staff to go to conferences and have travelling fellowships for their education. So we think a travelling fellowship between the 2 units where we can share ideas and see how treatments are done and bring back the best of those units together will enhance the stuff, because to have a good unit, you need good people. And having good people means that they're motivated to be educated, and we see those travelling fellowships as exactly doing that. The final area is basic research, as in laboratory research. And we're very lucky at St Vincent's to have a group in the Garvan Institute that are world leaders in what's called dormant myeloma cells, or sleeping cells that contribute to relapse. And Georgia McCorn has been working hard with Peter Crouch and Prue Fan in that area. We'd like to develop that and link in with the expertise at Dana-Farber. So we see it as a 3-pronged attack, and we're very grateful for all our donors. And I'd like to particularly thank the Trong family for their donation for creating this position. I'm extremely lucky and I'm humbled by their donation, and of course, James Symond and the Zamasa Foundation and Delta and all our other partners who have really made all this help happen. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Georgia, that brings us directly to your research and roles at the Zamasa Foundation, the Zamasa Foundation Myeloma Fellow and Hematologist at St Vincent's. I understand that you have led the formation of another important St Vincent's collaboration, a myeloma research collaboration with the Garvan Institute of Medical Research. Can you tell us about this collaboration and the progress to date?
Of course. So I just wanted to thank James Symond as well for this incredible donation, and also acknowledge the Zamasa Foundation. I was the inaugural Zamasa Foundation Myeloma Fellow, and that was an incredible opportunity for me over the last 2 years to develop my clinical and research interests in myeloma, and are now staying at St Vincent's permanently to further develop the myeloma program. So thank you very much. Over the last 2 years, we've formed a close collaboration with Professor Peter Croucher and Professor Tree Fan at the Garvan Institute of Medical Research, and that's co-located here at St Vincent's on campus. So very convenient collaboration. Peter and Tree are world-renowned experts in the area of cancer cell dormancy and the role of the bone marrow niche in terms of reactivating these dormant tumour cells, and in particular in multiple myeloma. Unfortunately, at the moment, multiple myeloma remains incurable in most patients, and these dormant cancer cells refer to cancer cells that hide out and are resistant to chemotherapy and hide from the immune system, and they avoid detection, and then they're thought to later be reactivated and contribute to disease relapse. Peter and Tree had characterized and defined these myeloma cells in mouse models, and we're now working on a collaborative project with them using human samples from our patients here at St Vincent's to identify these dormant tumour cells and define them and characterize them. And we're using a novel technique called single cell sequencing, and there's a lot of expertise using that technique at the Garvan. As you mentioned, we've been successful in obtaining some grant funding, and we're pursuing further funding opportunities for the research as well. And this is really novel research, and the Garvan Institute is really one of the few centres with expertise in this area of cancer cell dormancy, as well as significant expertise in single cell sequencing.
Excellent. And how do you see the collaboration with the Garvan Institute and now the partnership between St Vincent's and Dana-Farber leading to better outcomes for people living with myeloma and perhaps even other hematological cancers?
Yes, so sure. From the collaboration with the Garvan, we hope that by better defining what these dormant cells are, what their characteristics are, that we may be able to initially predict relapse in patients, and then hopefully identify treatments that may be able to eradicate these dormant tumour cells and prevent relapse. So that would be the ultimate goal of the project. And we hope that the success of this collaboration with the Garvan will lead to other collaborations between the Department of Haematology and the Garvan Institute in other haematological malignancies that may also advance knowledge in those areas. And in terms of the collaboration with Dana-Farber, I mean, as everyone has mentioned, Dana-Farber is an internationally renowned institution in terms of myeloma treatment, clinical trials, as well as basic science research. And this is an incredible opportunity for St Vincent's. I think the fellowships that John mentioned will allow both nursing and medical staff to travel to Dana-Farber, and they'll obviously have exposure to state-of-the-art treatment in myeloma, which ultimately will benefit patient care here at St Vincent's when they return. Our plan to run collaborative clinical trials across both centres will allow our patients to have access to novel drugs that they would not have access to within Australia currently. And our collaboration on translational research projects, such as the cancer cell dormancy work, will help to advance the knowledge in terms of the disease biology of myeloma. And as I mentioned, potentially in the future, new treatments which will improve outcomes for patients with myeloma.
Great, thanks so much, Georgia. Now I'd like to ask for your input, Paul. The St Vincent's Dana-Farber collaboration sounds like such an exciting partnership. What drew you to the idea of collaborating with St Vincent's, and what would you like to see this partnership achieve over the next few years?
Well, thank you very much, Claire, and a very good evening from Boston and good morning to you all in Australia. And it's really a privilege to be with you. And I think actually the simple fact of why I'm here is because of James Symond. And it's a small world, but I remember getting a phone call from one of your most famous Australians, Andrew Forrest, who I first met when I was 22 years young, and we were young and single and foolish in Britain. And that's actually when I first met Andrew. But anyway, we've since reconnected over years. And Andrew called me and said, I'd like you to call a friend of mine. I think he might need some help from you, Paul. And I called James. I'll never forget that conversation because I was calling him from Somerset in England, actually, where I happened to be with the very same man who had introduced me to Andrew when we were 22 years old. So an incredibly small degree of freedom. But in any event, that led to a wonderful partnership with James, helping him in his journey, and the privilege of meeting John, Georgia, and the whole St. Vincent's team, and especially also Jacob, James's outstanding nephrologist, and really understanding the complexity of the challenges James was facing, but to bring our expertise to that table and to help James in his journey, and especially meet his family. It's funny that Anthony was getting John and James confused. I also had the privilege of meeting John as well, and his wife Amber. So in every way, connecting with the Symond family and really appreciating his father and his mom and everyone. And it's that kind of basis of patient and family that's the sort of platform actually at Dana-Farber that we believe in, because that's actually what it's all about. And so we bring from bench to bedside the new therapies. And it was particularly nice to do this in a literally a trans-Pacific way, in particular with John, Georgia, Sam, and the team at St. Vincent's. And it was a privilege to visit before the pandemic, actually, St. Vincent's in the end of 2019, and actually spend time with John and Georgia in person, and Sam, and above all with James, and also see what the facilities are and what amazing potential you have at St. Vincent's to grow. We've always had in the myeloma community an international spirit, and we've had the privilege of working with great Australian myeloma experts like Doug Joshua and others, and been in a position to develop partnerships in that same spirit. And that's actually what we've done. And so it was a really logical next step to build with St. Vincent's a very specific, focused effort at bringing new therapies, as Georgia so nicely outlined, and bringing the very best of what we could offer to St. Vincent's. And at the same time, that's a two-way street, because I think the work that Georgia's doing in dormancy, for example, is absolutely key and very, very important. So we're hoping that we can bring new drugs, as Georgia pointed out, new opportunities for Australian patients, educational opportunities for faculty from St. Vincent's to come to the United States, and in particular to Dana-Farber, which we have actually done with Australian faculty in the past as well before, and continue to grow that relationship. But above all, I want to bring it back to patients, and in particular to James and his journey. And what we're really wanting to do is to bring state-of-the-art therapies. And Sam touched on this very nicely. CAR T therapy is a whole new direction in myeloma, but we need to do much more than that. It's an all hands to the pump type of disease. As Sam mentioned, it's a very complex disease and it's very different. So one size clearly does not fit all. And so with that in mind, there are a multitude of opportunities therapeutically that we hope to be able to bring to the partnership. And so in turn, bring that to patients, and above all, for example, to be able to help James and patients like James in their journey. And I think as we think about the future, what I'd like to see the partnership achieve, I think it would be just that we bring a continuum of progress in terms of our therapeutics, recognizing in the literature, and then you touched on this very nicely, Claire, in the last 20 years, we've had 15 new approvals, where in the previous 20 years, we'd had pretty much none. And that has really translated into patient benefit. So we'd hope to bring that kind of measure of progress and momentum to our partnership with St. Vincent's.
Wonderful. And what do you see as the critical factors for continued innovation to advance translational myeloma research, both here in Australia and in the US?
Well, I think the critical factor is actually the people. James touched on it beautifully. I mean, that is actually what makes it work. I mean, resources are vital, and it's incredible to have the generosity of James and his family supporting this initiative. But I think at the end of the day, it's bringing people together and providing the kind of catalysts that make things happen. And it's been a real privilege to work with John and Georgia and the team. I mean, it's just a pleasure. Look forward to our Zooms, look forward to our interactions, and look forward to seeing each other in person once the worst of the pandemic is behind us again. But having said that, I think it's very, very important to recognize the value of what James has done. Because quite seriously, without James stepping up to the plate, to use a baseball term, we would not be able to move. And I think as a result of that, we're going forward. So I'm extremely grateful to James and his family. And it's just a privilege, frankly, to be able to partner with the St. Vincent's team and I look forward to it growing. And in fact, we have talked about it going further out into Australia and broadening as we build clinical trials together. And Georgia and I have been discussing that. We'd love to involve colleagues in Melbourne, beyond Sydney, also in Perth, particularly to acknowledge Andrew's original connection for the two of us, for James and I, and to move from there. So it could bring a sort of national impetus to myeloma trials in Australia.
Excellent, exciting times. I'll hand back to Anthony.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claire, and thank you to all of our panelists for sharing the inspiration behind this wonderful partnership. It's now my great pleasure to introduce the Honourable Arthur Sinodinos, AO, who is Australia's ambassador to the United States, having taken up his posting in Washington in February of 2020. He was previously Australia's Minister for Industry, Innovation and Science, and was a Senator for New South Wales in the Australian Parliament from 2011 to 2019. Over a career spanning 4 decades, Ambassador Sinodinos has dedicated his professional life to the advancement of Australia and its people. I'm incredibly pleased to say that amongst his many impressive achievements, in 2019, Arthur successfully transitioned from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma patient to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma survivor. He's previously described how fortunate he felt to have the care and service of the St. Vincent's team, and working alongside Sam Milliken, who we've heard from, beg your pardon, this morning. Please join me in welcoming the Ambassador to officially launch this new and exciting partnership between Australia and the United States.
Oh, well, thank you, Anthony. Very generous with your introduction. And look, when I was first offered the opportunity to be part of this, I really jumped at it because it was a chance to get back together with the St. Vincent's family. And for me, they did become a family. It was a new experience for me to suddenly be quite sick and having to spend extended periods in hospital undertaking what I thought was pretty severe treatment to begin with. Took me a while to get adjusted to the chemo. As you said, I was diagnosed with a non-Hodgkin lymphoma. It took about 3 months to actually get to the bottom of what I had. And by that stage, it was a stage 4. And so it was looking pretty tough. So by the time Sam thought I should be admitted to hospital, the hope he gave me was that, look, it's very obviously in an advanced state, but that also means it could react quite well to treatment, funnily enough. And so we've got to get on with it. And so I went from a very busy ministerial parliamentary life to becoming a patient, getting a central port put in and all that other stuff that you do. And it was a humbling experience. But the way that I was embraced by the family at St. Vincent's, by Sam and his team, the way they dealt with me, the candor, the honesty, not giving hope unless hope, could realistically be given. I really appreciated the way that was all done. So for me, while, this may sound a funny thing to say, it actually does bring back some good memories of the fellowship and the comradeship along the way. I was lucky enough to respond to the treatment and have a bone marrow transplant. I've learned a lot more about immunology, about how the immune system works than I ever thought I would need. But it also awakened in me an interest in cancer survivorship. And part of what I've done since is try and encourage our medical authorities, our health authorities, our politicians and others to focus on how we deal with cancer survivors. And that's something I think I will continue to do, whatever other career I have in the future. Let me say that wearing one of my other hats as a former industry, innovation and science minister, these sorts of collaborative partnerships we're talking about here today are very important because, you know, Australia has great science and research, but we're always at our best when we're pooling our resources, dealing with other people, whether it's in other hospitals, in other research settings, or in other countries, to bring the best possible results to the table. This is the way you get the best science and the best research done. So I commend St. Vincent's for this partnership. I think we will see great things out of it. I started to read a bit about multiple myeloma. I didn't realize what an insidious disease it was, and the impact it can have, not just immediately, but over a number of years, and the way that it can seemingly go away and then come back. So to the point Georgia made before, you know, that the moonshot here is to get to a stage where we can eliminate this. And these sorts of partnerships take us that much further. And to James, Simon, thank you so much for your contribution to make this happen and for your philanthropy. Mate, I know you've been through a difficult time. You've shown a lot of courage. We sort of met up briefly before I came over to the States, but I'm keen to catch up with you next year when I may be back for consultations and hear a bit more of your story. But I'm always inspired when I hear the story of people who've been through the mill, they've shown the courage, they've come out the other side, and who then generously give back and want to give people opportunities they may not have had. So from my perspective, James, anything I can do to help promote the partnership here in the US, I will certainly be very happy to do. Can I say the Chong family, I feel for your loss, but I also admire the way that you have turned that loss into such great generosity at St. Vincent's. And your commitment, your extraordinary commitment over 10 years to fund the role of Director of Cellular Therapies to lead the program. And it's great that John Moore is on this call today. I think that work of you, the Chong family, is an enduring legacy that I'm sure your son would be proud of. May I say, from my perspective, as I sit here in the US, what you are doing fits into, I guess, one of the things that I wanted my ambassadorship to be about, which is to encourage that greater cross-fertilization between the innovation systems in the US and Australia. We do great things in Australia, but we don't have the scale or range of the US. And yet the US, I find, really appreciate, people in the US really appreciate working with Australians. You know, it's funny, we talk about the mateship between us. There's nothing forced about it. There's nothing artificial. It just happens. We seem to get each other. What I think Americans like about Australians is that we're practical and we get on with it. We adapt to the circumstances we're in. And I find wherever I go, when you talk to Americans about working with Australians, they immediately say, yep, let's get on with it. I want to take the opportunity to just acknowledge some other people who are with us today. Paul McClintock, the chairman. We worked together in the Howard government when he was cabinet secretary. Paul, it's great you're with us, and thank you for everything you've done, not just in the corporate field, but particularly in the philanthropic field. My good friend, Dave Sharma, the local member, a great bloke, and I hope has a great future in politics ahead of him. Oh, I'm sure he's got a great future ahead of him in politics. And to Charles Curran, Charles, you really are a great Australian. I sometimes throw that phrase around with some of my colleagues, but you really are a great Australian. Your vision, your capacity to give, the role you play, not just as a great benefactor, but as a mentor to many. You've been a mentor to me. I admire your spirit of public service. You're a paragon of public service. Charles, it's a privilege to be with you as well. So Anthony, from my point of view, thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you. Whatever I can do to support the partnership, I will. So it just, all that's left to me is to officially launch the St. Vincent's Dana-Farber Cancer Institute partnership and to pledge my support to do whatever I can over here in the States to make this the great success that I'm sure it will be. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, and thank you for speaking of your personal experience. We very much value all that you are doing to support our cellular therapies program. Similar to James, you will always be part of the St. Vincent's family, and I look forward to welcoming you back on campus when you are able to travel. So thank you so much for giving of your time this evening in the US. The ambassador mentioned the amazing work and vision and leadership of Charles Curran, AC, chairman of the trustees of the St. Vincent's Curran Foundation, who it's my great pleasure to introduce. Charles was in fact the chairman of the board of St. Vincent's Hospital in 1982 to 88, when the concept of cellular therapy was in its infancy here in Australia. He continues to be an inspiration to so many of us, and it's my great pleasure to invite Charles to say a few words.
Thank you, Anthony, and our thanks to all the participants on this webinar, including many donors and supporters of the Foundation and our hospitals. Thank you for joining us today for the important launch of this new international partnership. And Arthur, if I could say a personal thank you for your very generous remarks about me. As has been discussed, St. Vincent's Hospital has a long-established track record in the area of haematology, bone marrow transplantation, and stem cell transplantation in Australia. St. Vincent's is the site where the first bone marrow transplant was performed in 1975. And as with other fields of endeavour, we have built on that expertise over the ensuing years. This has been made possible through the continuing support of philanthropy. Today, we achieve yet another milestone through the establishment of this important new partnership with the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute and Harvard Medical School in Boston, made possible through the generous gift of James Symond. Now, thanks, James, to you and your family for your long-standing support of St. Vincent's Hospitals. This particular gift is most meaningful as a result of your personal connection to Professor John Moore, Professor Paul Richardson, and their teams. Thank you also for encouraging them in the first place to form this collaboration, which will help to advance treatments and training in multiple myeloma research to benefit many patients today and into the future. Today, we've heard about science, and Paul, you also spoke about people and the many wonderful people who are involved in what we're doing. And the glue, as we heard, in bringing these people together was James. Thank you very much, James. And of course, similar and more eloquent expression of thanks was conveyed by Arthur Sinodinos. Now, thanks also to Professor Paul Richardson for his warm comments about Australia and the relationship with the team here at St. Vincent's. Whilst you're on the other side of the world, the sentiments and approach you have conveyed today are very much in line with the commitment of St. Vincent's to the values of excellence, compassion, and integrity, to which our hospitals are also committed. Thank you very much, Paul. In fact, all of our clinicians today are exemplars of the partnership model of the St. Vincent's Healthcare Precinct, which began with the vision of the Sisters of Charity to establish research institutes as an integral part of our St. Vincent's hospitals, to ensure the fastest possible translation of medical research and advances to patient treatment. Dr. Sam Milliken, Professor John Moore, Dr. Georgia McCann and their colleagues have demonstrated ongoing commitment to the vision of our founding sisters of charity. My special thanks to my dear friend Arthur Sinodinos AO, the Ambassador of Australia to the US, who has joined us today to officially launch this new partnership and has so generously shared his own patient experience and journey at St Vincent's Hospital. Arthur also spoke of the spirit of mateship, which embodies the relationship between Australia and the United States, and the importance of that spirit of collaboration in medical research and so many other aspects of our strategic alliance. And when I spoke privately to Arthur a little earlier this morning, I said to him how grateful so many Australians are that we have him as our ambassador to Washington at this time when there are so many important developments in the international world. Arthur, your involvement today lifts the establishment of this partnership to a level of national and international significance, which it very well merits. Today, you've gone beyond your role of ambassador to the US and also to be a wonderful ambassador for St Vincent's, for which we are most grateful. In speaking of ambassadors, I sincerely thank our inspirational St Vincent's ambassador, Delta Goodrum, who has established the Delta Goodrum Foundation in support of our cellular therapy program. Delta has also helped us in many other ways, including her support for our fundraising and, importantly, by her encouragement of younger patients through her regular program of non-publicised hospital visits. As we've heard, the partnerships formed in support of our vision for cellular therapy extend to the many individuals and foundations who are working with the St Vincent's Current Foundation to provide essential funding for the program. Therefore, I also extend thanks on behalf of Richard Haddock AO, Chairman of the St Vincent's Current Foundation Board and the Foundation, to our supporters, and in particular, Dr. John Chong, Mrs. Ann Chong and their family. And Arthur, you spoke so beautifully about what the Chong family has done and the way they have turned a personal tragedy into a situation which is so wonderful and which will benefit so many people into the future. I also refer to the Bourne Foundation, the Delta Goodrum Foundation, to which I referred a moment ago, the Medici Foundation and the Naloon Foundation. All of these wonderful supporters have enabled the development first of the new HMBT ward and now the fellowships and resources required for the clinical research program. Like me and my family members, many of the individuals and foundations who have formed part of our philanthropic endeavours are grateful for having benefited from the integrated, collaborative approach of the St Vincent's Darlinghurst precinct. We've heard today specifically about ensuring the progress of the leadership already established by St Vincent's Darlinghurst in the area of cellular therapy. The next crucial step will be the establishment of a new physical home for the centre in the proposed St Vincent's Translational Research and Education Centre next to the Lowy Packer building, and that joins also the Kinghorn Cancer Centre and the Garvan Institute. It's on the corner of Liverpool and West Streets. This development involves a new building at a cost of $150 million, for which we are very actively, day by day as we speak, working out the funding arrangements for and the support that we need. And this will be a further springboard for the wide range of clinical research underway across the precinct. Thank you, Anthony, for being MC today and having done so well. And to our talented friend, Claire Weaver, thank you, Claire, from Channel 9. You've really expertly facilitated and so warmly facilitated the discussion by our panel. And as always at St Vincent's, there is a firm focus on continuing to build the national and international reputation of Australian healthcare and medical research. You referred to that, Arthur, and yes, we fully subscribe and be doing all that we can for that. And this is for the benefit of patients now and into the future. So today's partnership announcement is an important part of this focus and vision of St Vincent's Hospital under the leadership of our CEO, Professor Anthony Shembry, AM. We have all been inspired by this new milestone for the St Vincent Centre of Excellence in Cellular Therapy in partnership with Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. And I know how keenly our team looks forward to keeping us all up to date with developments and advances as they occur. And for this, we thank you all. And to all participating today, thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you so much, Charles, for that vote of thanks. And may I also say a very special thank you to the St Vincent's Current Foundation for all that you do for St Vincent's hospitals here in New South Wales. We are so very, very grateful. Thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Ambassador, for officially launching our partnership. Thank you, James Symond, for your visionary philanthropy. Thank you to all of our supporters and friends who have been viewing our launch today. If you would like to support St Vincent's, please visit www.supportstvincents.com.au. I wish you all the very best for the rest of your day and evening, and thank you all so much for joining us. Goodbye.